that. But yeah, the consistency is huge because you're exactly right. Like a pro-life person who then makes concessions now weakens their own argument without any outside pressure or force. You know what I mean? And so yeah, like I respect people who can hold to the and maybe that's naive of me, but that's the silver lining I see in people who can sometimes be labeled extreme is like, well, all right, at least they're consistent in their worldview.
Yes,
And
yes.
like and so that's what I think is really interesting. And yeah, and I was like, yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, like it in terms of their actions, I probably would agree more with someone who's like a sort of a moderate Christian, like who would make exceptions for that. But philosophically, I have way more respect for the people that stay consistent. And then I start to
Yeah, yeah.
question, like, wait a second, you got knocked off of this view by like the most basic question ever. Are you sure you actually believe that abortion is wrong? Like, do you have the conviction of believing in Jesus and all the teachings? If literally I asked you one question and now you're saying this, like, come on. So,
Yeah,
and
which
honestly,
is why. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, well, this will be a kind of a side point, but I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest problem. Not to sound like a grandpa, but with the kids these days, is I just think, and really adults
Yeah.
too, is like there's just no critical thinking. It feels like that a lot of people's views is like, okay, well, I saw it on TikTok, or my friends are saying it, or I saw it on Twitter, and that's what I feel. And that goes for Christians, that goes for atheists. Of course, a Christian
Yeah.
is my critique would be more that it's kind of you would read something in scripture or go to mass and not really think about it. But even someone that's like a atheist or agnostic could fall into that same trap with something like getting political views from TikTok or whatever.
Yeah. I think more so than just a lack of like critical thinking.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I think
Hmm.
more than a lack of critical thinking, I think it's a dependence on the way that we consume media, and I think it's the time spent in consuming media. And so, like for example, um, we have a classroom setting. I'm a youth pastor, youth and young adult pastor out here in Arizona, and we have a on Sunday mornings. We don't have like a traditional service. We have like what I would call a classroom discussion.
Okay.
What you would think in your head of like Sunday school used to be. Um, and the way that I do it in when I'm leading that class, because I have some other leaders and stuff who do other things, but when I'm doing it, I literally open it up and I go, all right, what are we talking about today? And we will break down different things and talk about it. And the things that we say, it's not that they don't have a belief, it's that they've never experienced somebody still holding the same belief but coming to it in a different path, and that will be challenging to them. So like for example, we've had a lot of discussion around it was this big thing. And if any of my youth students are watching this, because I'm going to try to promote it and tell them like, hey, there's this cool discussion that we have.
Yeah.
But like we had this conversation a couple months ago about lowercase gods, right? The lowercase g. And there was a student who was really bothered by the fact that I acknowledged lowercase gods. I even called Satan a lowercase god. Scripture says it in, I believe it's First John, that talks about Satan being the god of the earth, being the god of this world. And I was using it just as an example. I thought of it as kind of a passive comment, but it really challenged a couple of our students and made them feel uncomfortable. And I think more so than lacking critical thinking, because I think students, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they want to go there, but I think nobody has taught them how to go there. And so that uncomfortability that they feel with critical thinking, it's not that they don't want to, and it's not that they're too lazy, but it's that they don't have anybody to help them understand it. Right. And we could talk about like all the things wrong with like different systems and structures and those kind of things. Like schools are just out uh, test scores and ACT prep and
Oh,
all that
dude,
stuff. Like,
dude, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Don't get me I had a huge
It
problem
like
with that in college that we can get into too, but yeah.
we've lost the ability to teach people how to, like, actually think and actually, like, deal with things, and so I don't think it's, like, a unwillingness to. I think it's an uncomfortability that they have, and then they don't know how, and so they just kinda sit there with it, and that's the output that they have, is that it comes across as, "Well, you just watched a TikTok video," and it's like, "Yeah, but nobody's teaching me how to, like, like, wrestle with it or talk about it," and that's where I think people are lacking that skill, and that's across, like, religious backgrounds, denominational backgrounds, like, I think that's generationally where we're at. I think boomers are the same way, right? Like, so Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they'll consume TikTok, but they don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
right? And so they just don't do anything. Boomers and the silent generation and some of those guys, they're watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and they're doing the same thing. You know, and it's just a different media in a different medium. They're just as uncomfortable with having to, like, go find it than as it's generational, and it just the platforms are what change.
Yeah, that I think the common denominator here would just be, like, maybe it's just, like, a fear of conflict. I think the idea that I think, I remember when I was growing up around
Mhm.
in my mom's household, um, I have a ton of problems with her, so not to hype her up too much, but, one thing I did enjoy about being there was that it was like I felt very free to say my opinion, you know? And so
Yeah.
then that was something that I would go other places, and it was like, you get into an argument, and after, like, the 2nd or 3rd point, it would just be shut down. And in my head,
Mhm.
I'm like, especially as, like, a teenager and, like, a young adult now, I'm thinking, like, w you know, there's a difference between a debate and an argument, right?
Yeah.
And a debate
Yeah.
and a perfect example of this actually, and I think you would fall into the same category, is my mother-in-law to be is pretty religious. And,
Okay. Yeah.
we've had some, like, genuine debates about this. But she's my
Love it.
favorite family member. Her beliefs in some instances are, like, polar opposite of mine. But the fact that she can
Yep.
discuss it is something that I'll respect. Now, she has
Ah,
said some stuff.
absolutely.
One of the dumbest things I've ever heard was when she was like, I said, we were talking about faith, and I was like, "Are you like it's good to change your mind on things or something like that?" And she said, "I will change my mind on everything except for my faith. I will never change my mind on that." And
That's interesting.
my thought was like, that's just silly. Like, you should be able to change your mind on everything. If somebody comes to you with enough evidence and a belief of something, you should be able to change
Mhm.
your mind. So that, but other, that's that aside, the fact that she is able to even hear me say that and we
Yeah,
can keep being cordial is nice. You know
absolutely.
what I mean? And I think a lot of it is just that, like, for some reason people are like, "Oh, there's a disagreement. That means this is like code red. We can't go any further." And there's this link, and you'll probably understand this. I would imagine growing up in the Owensboro, there's this link between, like, pushback and disrespect, right? For some
Yeah,
reason, those are always linked.
yeah,
But for me, if my kid
yeah.
provides me pushback, I'm like, this is great because he's trying to learn. He's trying to figure out the. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, don't, can't be disrespectful. But if I got into an
Yeah.
hour argument with my kid about something, like, if they're being respectful, that to me is so stimulating to their brain, you know?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and honestly, man, I think especially again, like, I'm a youth and young adult pastor, so my age range is middle school, 6th grade, all the way up to, like, 30 years old.
okay.
And I think people in that demographics, right? So we're seeing um, Gen Z, and then now you have Gen Alpha kind of coming up, and then even the generation behind that, you know. And I think you're seeing a genuine desire to go there, but I think they just don't know how, and so it's on people, and it's on conversations like this to be able to model it and show it and allow them to go, okay, so this is how I can do this.